believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo, and this also known as Ricky Franz, and a great episode for you today. Today we have a fellow Portuguese-speaking friend of mine, Dr. Eduardo Corassa. And he has an amazing story about being a super successful gamer, traveling all over the world, making tons of money, going to tournaments, seeing different countries. But during this whole process, he neglected his health. He was snacking, he was eating whatever. And little by little, it all caught up to him, and he had to change his life. And he tells this amazing story of this complete transformation and how he went from neglecting and not caring about health and nutrition to health and nutrition being his complete focus. And I must say, I don't 100% agree with his methods, but I definitely agree with his message. And health and nutrition is one of those things where there's a lot of conflicting opinions and perspectives, and I've done a lot of episodes on this topic. So please go back in the archives, check out episodes I've done with Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, Rob Wolf, who's actually returning and will be on the next episode, so it's perfect timing. Episodes I've done with CJ Hunt, who's a documentary filmmaker who did the documentary The Perfect Human Diet. Shows I've done with Dr. Thomas Seyfried, shows I've done with Dr. Sean Baker, and a couple more shows I've done on health and nutrition that I think are very fascinating and worth checking out are shows I've done with Chris and Mark Bell. They both have been on separately. Chris Bell is a documentary filmmaker who did Prescription Thugs and also A Leaf of Faith, which is about Kratom, and that's what we talked about when he came on the show. And then his brother Mark Bell was on many episodes later, and we talked about health, nutrition, leadership, and many more things. And he's well known for his creation of the Slingshot for powerlifting, and also he's the host of Mark Bell's Power Project, which is an amazing podcast. I highly recommend you checking out. So there are some episodes to go get some different opinions and different perspectives. I didn't want to be argumentative, so I didn't push back too much. I, in the past, have done episodes like the one I did with Dr. Pam Popper, who came on to talk about COVID, and then we end up arguing. I shouldn't say argue, but we end up debating and disagreeing and spending much of the show disagreeing on what we should be eating in diet and nutrition and that type of thing. So I didn't want to do that on this episode. I didn't want to derail the conversation. And if I ever do push back, hopefully the guests understand that I'm just trying to push back because I want to challenge ideas, but I'm also open for my ideas to be challenged, because when ideas are challenged, when you hear people defend them or expand on them, that's when you can really figure out if they make sense or don't make sense, and you can kind of reevaluate your stance on things. So that's really what I'm trying to do when I do push back from time to time if I disagree with somebody. And sometimes, like I said, I don't, because either I'm not certain if they're right or wrong, or I'm just attempting not to derail the conversation and keep it flowing so the focus of the show doesn't become our disagreement. With that said, of course, I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. I know you're going to take something from it. That's the fun thing about doing these type of shows, is that even with guests that you don't 100% agree with and maybe have some disagreements, you can always take something from trying to understand their perspectives, and you can always learn something from their research. And if you do learn something from this podcast, or any of my podcasts, or if you enjoy them, remember this is a value for value show. If you are receiving some type of value from this show, please consider giving some value back. Like I always tell you guys, it doesn't have to be financial. There's plenty of ways to help support the show just by sharing, reviewing, subscribing to the Ripple Effect Podcast on all the audio and video platforms I'm on. And you can find all those channels on my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com, or in the show description. But if you can financially support the show, please consider sending a one-time donation to our PayPal account, to our Venmo account. You can also donate monthly via our Patreon page. And it really is one of the best ways of supporting the show because I can count on that contribution every month to help support the Ripple Effect podcast and pay for any expenses. Of course, other ways of supporting the show is checking out our merch store. If you want to get mugs, hats, t-shirts, kids' clothes, cups, water bottles, any of that type of stuff, check out the Ripple Effect podcast merch store. You can find a link on my website in the show description, and you can go directly to it by going to the Ripple Effect podcast merch.com. So 3 different ways of finding the merch store, and there's tons of stuff on there. Please consider checking it out. Browse around. If you have any suggestions, if you're looking for anything specific, let me know. Everything is super reasonably priced, and the quality of everything is very high. It doesn't take long to get, so please check out the Ripple Effect podcast merch.com. Other ways of supporting the show is checking out our sponsors. First one is Content Safe. Matt from Content Safe syncs all my video channels together. So I upload to one channel, usually it's Odyssey, and then within 24 hours, it appears on my Rockfin channel, my Band.video channel, my Rumble channel, and much more. So if you're a content creator, please check out Matt from Content Safe. He also can help with many other services, too many to list here, but he created my website and runs my website and has done many other things for me. So if you need an IT guy of any sort, check out Matt from Content Safe. Let him know you're listening to the podcast, and he'll definitely hook you up. The next sponsor is the University of Reason, created by Richard Grove. He's a dear friend who I've known for many years, one of the most intelligent guys I know, and he used his intellect and the things he has learned throughout his years of researching and learning and share that with the world to make your life better also. And if you check out the University of Reason, he can help you expand on some skills, learn some new skills, also connect with the community. So please, if you're at a crossroads in life or you feel like you're a hamster on a wheel running in place, check out the University of Reason. Use the link in the show description, and you can help yourself and help the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. Last but not least, my next sponsor is Element Electrolytes, created by Rob Wolf, who is one of the most respected people in the paleo keto community. He's been around for a long time. He's been on the Ripple Effect podcast before, and he's also on the next episode, and we'll expand in much deeper detail what makes Element Electrolytes so unique, the origin story of it, why he created it, how it helps, who it can help, and much more. So if you're looking for a healthy way of staying hydrated with no artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners, it has the right dosages, because that's something I constantly stress, is that some products say it has zinc or vitamin B or C or whatever, or potassium, magnesium, sodium, whatever it's trying to sell you. But if you look at the dosages, it's not enough of the vitamins or minerals or electrolytes to make a difference. So Rob Wolf created an electrolyte product that gives you enough of the things you need to really optimize your body and mind and help you with the symptoms that could be due to dehydration, like headaches, fatigue, muscle soreness, and much more. So use the link in the show description or use the link on my website, and you'll get a free gift with every purchase. You will support the Ripple Effect podcast and stay hydrated and help yourself optimize your body, your mind, and your life. So that's it, guys. Enjoy this amazing conversation with my guest, Dr. Corassa, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
First of all, my name is Eduardo Corassa. Here in Brazil, I'm known as Dr. Corassa because I have a degree in nutrition. Actually, here it's like 5-year university. It's like a way longer course than usually in Europe and America for nutrition. And I grew up in Rio de Janeiro, always playing video games and always eating a lot of junk food and taking a lot of medicine, going to a lot of doctors because I'm always sick. And when I was 17, I started playing Counter-Strike, one of the most played computer games in the world. Back then was probably the biggest game. Nowadays, I think it's not, but still it's quite big. And I was like really good with video games, but I sucked in everything else, like sports and school. I was always, performing badly and always sick as well. So from 17 to 22, I traveled all around the world competing on in a Counter-Strike team. We created like one of the best teams in the world back then. And it was a blessing for, a 17-year-old child to travel the world and, making money out of video games. It was quite cool. But I was getting sicker every time because I didn't have a good health since I was young. And then with Counter-Strike, we started traveling, making money. We were kids. We didn't know that we should take care of our health, not only because if it's our bodies, and you have only one body, but also because even with Counter-Strike, you have to take care of yourself to play well. Like an athlete, he must to eat well. He shouldn't be drinking and smoking and doing drugs and doing anything that destroy his performance on his sports. And then I realized the connection because I started playing bad. I started having really bad issues like back pains, respiratory issues, and also I was not playing as good as I was back then. So I started looking what I'm doing wrong, not just to get sick, but to also not play my best. And I was afraid of losing my place on the team that I created, that I loved so much to travel. So travel the world and make money, we were quite famous back then. And I realized that lifestyle was a big issue to my health issues. So I started like lifting weights, swimming almost every day. I started like changing my diet, eating better, But back then, what I knew was like quite, basic, coming back to rice, beans, and some meat instead of eating junk food every day, trying to sleep a little bit earlier, trying to exercise every day. And I kept looking because I knew there was something more. And I was still sick, although I was looking big and lifting weights, already shredded. But I went to a lot of medical doctors and they were always like drugs and surgery, drugs and surgery, drugs and surgery. And I was like, no, this cannot be it. Like I'm 22. I'm already cutting my back to, cure a herniated disc. I'm already cutting my nose to, they do the surgery inside the nose that they like, and he was like, my MD back then was like, yeah, you can make surgery, you can go for surgery, but it's only going to help a little bit because you were born with this. These allergies, these respiratory problems, it's an issue that you were born with. And like, I kept, no, this can't be it. I respected them back then, but they were fat. They were looking way more sick than I was. So how they can teach me about health, right? And I was like, I started looking into the internet and I found raw food diet, like Demi Moore's raw food diet back then, like almost 17 years ago. And I was like, wow, this. I searched on Google and a lot of people, I heal this, I heal that, I function a lot better. And all animals in nature live like this. And I was like, I tried every therapy, natural therapy or a conventional allopathic therapy out there. I tried everything, but I didn't try eating like animals, eating raw foods like the way we're supposed to. And I didn't knew about chronobiology, chrononutrition. That is like our brains have a clock that we call the master clock. It's our suprachiasmatic nucleus, that it's controlled by Zeitgebers. Givers of time from the German word, that he gets the information from the sun, so he knows what time of the day it is, so he calibrates his own biological clocks inside of each organ. So the pancreas has a time for secreting insulin, right? So there's a lot of things to health that most people don't realize. And I was like, wow, raw foods. I didn't know all these back then, but I felt like I should eat a lot of raw foods. And I tried to quit cooked food at the same time I read the information. I even tried to eat some sweet potato raw. It was like so unappealing, so not appealing to my senses. It was like tough and it sucked. But like in 3 days, my allergies were gone. My respiratory problems were gone. I could hear better, see better. like smell better. I could run a lot faster. I could feel I was like smarter, more like more mental clarity. And I was like, whoa, like this is it. And I was sold. But in 2 months, I was way too skinny, and I was thinking of food every time. So I started searching on the internet again, and I found Doug Graham. He's an American. He's living on a frugivore diet for more than 40 years now. And he had wrote a book back then. And I was like, this old man, really fit, talking about how we are extremely similar to anthropoid primates. And we are classified by our biology as anthropoid primates. We share 99.3 of our DNA with bonobos. So he was talking a lot about diet, fruits and vegetables, or natural diet, that we don't have to cook fruits and vegetables to eat them. For potatoes, beans, rice, meat, you have to cook it. You have to salt it. It's not good from the plant, tough as it is, right? Or from the animal with bones and everything, with flesh and everything. And I was like, wow, this is it. So I tried, and I was like, I could maintain my weight really easy. I could exercise. I could do everything way better than I could. And for 16 years now, 16 years and a half, I'm going to the 17. I haven't had a sick day, not a sore throat, not a bad day, even being, not having that good mood. It's like you are always in perfect mood. You are like a Superman. You are like, I can go run in like a 0 degrees Celsius and not get sick, and nothing happens to me. It's like, it's completely different health mindset. Everything changed like crazy. So I devoted my life to teach this, what we call the science of health. It's a system of medicine, a model of medicine created by medical doctors in the US in the 1800s, that they were always saying that health is produced by healthful living, not by drugs, not by surgeries, not by viruses, and not by anything, but just by providing biological needs. To live in nature makes us provide these biological needs. For example, you cannot keep yourself awake until midnight because there's no electronic lights, there's no electric lights. So you cannot see the lights. So your brain doesn't think it's midday when it's actually midnight. So you're not going to eat at night, because eating at night, it's what we call chrononutrition. There's actually a time to eat for human beings. So if we eat at night, our cholesterol goes up, or triglycerides goes up, or glycemia goes up, or insulinemia goes up, like pro-inflammatory genes goes up, blood pressure goes up. A lot has changed in the pathological way, just because we are eating in a time that we never ate before in whole human evolution. So when I realized all this, I was like, wow, this is it. I'm going to live this way because I'm going to be a better Counter-Strike player. I'm going to be better at work. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be more healthier. And since then, I don't have health insurance. I don't need doctors. I don't need pills. I just need to interact with nature, like exercise every day, go to bed early every day, eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of raw food. For me, it's primarily only raw foods, right? And when I realized that the real medicine is actually nature, it's actually the soil, to touch the soil, to touch the trees, to touch food. So now after 16 years of studying, I'm writing my 10th book. I have like a YouTube channel with almost 400,000 subscribers. I teach this for 16 years. I have a TED Talks. Now I understand the science behind what I realized back then. It was just an insight that I should live healthy. But nowadays, there's a lot of science behind, like intermittent fasting, water fasting. And so I have even water fasted for 39 days. So I went almost 40 days already without food, just drinking water. So it's quite crazy. It sounds crazy. But if you look at nature, every animal does this. Every plant does this. Plants also have chronobiology. They have like a circadian rhythm. Plants also fast. They can have autolysis, as we call, autophagy, as we call. So, it became my life's dream to share this message with the world. And this is it.
Well, yeah, and we can expand on a lot of that stuff. I 100% agree with you. I think many of our health issues can be controlled and can be what's the word I'm looking for? We can be proactive in doing something for it and improving it. I think too often we go to a doctor looking for a pill, which is only symptom management. That's all it does. It's like, okay, if you're constipated, here's a pill that gives you diarrhea. If you have diarrhea, here's a pill that gives you constipation. But they don't get to the root cause of the issue. They never let you know like what's causing the issue. And a lot of times, you could do blood work or whatever it may be. It can be a vitamin deficiency. It could be, something that you could solve just by eating better or supplementing with vitamins. And I think a lot of times, that's not even something people entertain. But the truth is, like, that should be the first thing you do. Like I always say, I'm like, if there's a dietary therapy that can help you, why not give it a try? Worst case scenario, it doesn't work. Instead of taking a synthetic drug that without a doubt has tons of, side effects, you don't know what, long-term side effects it could have. And then it could lead to taking more drugs because, if you take this drug, it has this side effect. Now you don't know that this health concern is because of that pill. Now you take another pill for this side effect, and it just this roller coaster ride of just more and more pills. Back in the day when our parents were growing up, they used to, well, my parents were born on a farm in Portugal. So that, you basically, your medicine was things you could grow, things you could kill, things that you could pick from a tree. Like those were your foods, and they lived healthier. And, I go back to Portugal and see, just the old timers who are still working on the farm, and they're smiling and they're happy and they're healthy and they're not on any medication. Then you look at a lot of Americans, overstressed, which is another thing that can be improved by exercise and diet. That's the other thing. Like a lot of times when people talk about diet and exercise, they always think about physical improvements, but they don't talk about mental improvements. Like you said, clarity, cognitively becoming, just feeling sharper, and but also dealing with anxiety, dealing with stress, dealing with all those type of things. And it can change the way you look at the world, and that's the thing. We are chemistry. Everything you put in your body affects, the way your body, affects the way your body's perceiving reality. And so without a doubt, it's so important. One thing you said that I talk about a lot is like we say, you said we only have one body, and that's something that like we tend to forget. I tell people, I'm like, if I give you one car and I say you can never have another car ever again, that's the only car you're gonna have. If it breaks down, if it's if it's not running well, you're stuck with it. What would you do? You would take care of it, right? You would change the oil on time. You'd put good gas in it. You would put all the best stuff in it because you don't want to be stuck with a car that doesn't work. Well, your body is that car. And instead of treating our bodies like the car that can't be replaced, we treat it like a rental. We treat like a rental car that you're like, oh, I could smoke in it, no big deal. I'm gonna give it to somebody else. It's not my problem. And it's like, we have to look at our bodies. Like once it starts breaking down, you're screwed. And the thing is too is like, you go from unhealthy, or you go from healthy to unhealthy in slow little steps. Like people think like, oh, he looked, sometimes I hear my mother talk about it. You're like, oh, what's his, Jose Moro, oh my God, por qué, he looked healthy, and I'm just like, Mom, he might have looked healthy, but I'm like, this probably wasn't. And sometimes it can be spontaneous, but most of the time it's not spontaneous. It's bad life decisions after bad life decisions. You eat bad a little bit. Maybe you do not get enough sleep. Maybe you're on too many pills. Maybe you're not getting foods that are nutritionally dense. And little by little, those bad life decisions can eventually lead up to some to a health issue or even worse, death.
Bodybuilders look way too healthy. They look really cool, but on the inside, we know by their biochemistry and by even their death rate, they're not healthy. Even they admit that that's not healthy. But what we look from the outside is not what actually happens on the inside. So yeah, been there, done that. Before starting like a raw food diet, I was lifting weights, eating a lot of chicken and rice and beans, and I was like really big. Like I look really ripped and strong. I was almost doing bench press with almost 90 kilos, but on the inside, I knew I was sick. I was like 14, I just didn't show to people, but I knew I was feeling sick, but I was looking really healthy on the outside. And yeah,
you're right.
Health is a blessing. What?
I was going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like your external health, the way you look, doesn't reflect your internal health.
Yeah. There's no healthy people dropping dead like in a second from nowhere. It's not out of the blue. It has causes, but you just can't see it. The gene expression, the metabolic changes, the hormonal changes, there's a lot of changes going inside, biochemical changes, but we cannot see it.
I know we keep talking about raw food diet, and maybe somebody, we know what that is, but for somebody listening who might know the term but don't know the ins and outs of it, don't really know the details on what is a raw food diet.
I like to, when I started teaching back then, I was like, I need to know more than anybody to be able to teach, because or else the raw food movement in general, it's like too hippie, spiritual, like no science base whatsoever. They're somewhat right, because they can see, even without needing the scientific basis, they can understand that's the best way to eat. But we have to put the scientific basis into perspective. So raw food diet is like 700,000 species on the planet share the planet with us, and they all eat raw foods. But each kind of animal, each kind of species eats specific foods because they have evolved to eat that. For example, birds, they have big beaks, so they can pick the small grain of quinoa or the small grain of rice, and they can sprout on their pouches. So they can sprout over there for a few hours, and then they ingest it. They don't eat the grain like dry as it is, right? So for us, it's impossible to eat grains in their natural state. You have to cook it, or else they're too dry, too tough, too unpalatable. So, for example, pigs, they have big noses that they can smell 100 times more than us. So they can feel the potato under the land, under the soil. And they have paws that they can excavate, dig the ground so they can find the tubers. And then they have salivary and pancreatic amylase, so they can digest those hard tubers. We cannot eat potatoes raw. Cassava, yams, anything like that. It's too tough for us, and it's too not tasty. But for example, if you go to a jaguar, for example, he can reach out 120 kilometers in running. Like even Usain Bolt doesn't reach 40 kilometers per a few seconds or like a minute or so. They can like be 3 times faster than a human, like faster than a lot of old cars. 120 kilometers is like, it's what, 100 per mile, 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's
it's like
around.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So they can, for example, eat another animal raw. They can eat their bones, they can eat their flesh, they can eat like brains, intestines, they eat everything. And they eat it raw with gusto, with like a lot of taste. It's not like, like us human beings that go to barbecues and throw some salt and oil and garlic and onions on top of it, and make now I love meat. Yeah, for sure. We can eat meat. We can eat a lot of stuff. But it's it's biological to us. It's physiological. It was at how we evolve. For sure. I'm not talking about like maybe we were not vegans back then, but the science, the anthropology shows that we were eating like anthropoid primates. And anthropoid primates, the only anthropoid that eats actually animals, it's the chimpanzee. But he eats once a month in average. He doesn't eat for example, me, I grew up eating meat in the breakfast, eating meat at the first early noon lunch, and then at lunch, and then at, in the afternoon, and then at dinner, like it was the 5 times a day. Maybe if it was not meat, it was chicken, it was ham, it was like some form of processed meat or meat, but still, it was quite different. All the anthropology is showing and all the science shows that we are anthropoid primates, and that fruits and vegetables is inversely correlated with diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and blah, blah, blah. And all diseases that we know, fruits and vegetables actually helps to get them better or helps to prevent them or even reverse them. So it's for sure the food that is like colorful to our eyes, that is tasty to our mouth, and that is appealing to all of our senses, like smelling, it's our biological food. For example, do you need to cook figs? Do you need to cook figs? No, right? Do you need to season figs? No. If bananas, watermelons, melons, grapes, like you don't need to season them. That's for a reason. You don't need to cook them. And that's for a reason. We are anthropoid primates and we evolved with these foods. So, for example, the only animals that can see colors, that can sense the sweet taste, and that they have opposable thumbs to climb trees and pick this food, it's the anthropoid primates. So, for example, if you throw a mango to a cat, he doesn't see the color of the mango. So he doesn't know if it's ripe or not. He cannot sense the sweet taste because he doesn't have the genes for it. And he cannot even hold the mango together, like hold the mango in his hands and eat it. So I'm not suggesting maybe that we didn't eat meat back then, but the amount of fruits and vegetables that we ate, it was like 98%. It's like Okinawa, Vilcabamba, because of all what we call the blue zones. And we have Ikaria in Greece, that is also a blue zone. They are famous for living to 100 to 110, 120, to have a lot of centenarians and super centenarians. That are the centenarians that went above and went over 110 years of age. They all eat primarily plants, 97, 96% of plants, whole foods. Like you were saying, like I already went to Portugal 2 times. I love Portugal. I love Portuguese people, and I also connect with them a lot easier because of the language. I probably is that, but their agriculture, the fruits, vegetables, Portuguese figs, dude. I love Portuguese figs. It's like so sweet. And it's so, it comes ready from the plant. You don't even need to do anything, it's ready. When the plant gives to you, when it's ripe and the plant allows you to eat it, it's ready. God, the nature, the sun already cooked it for you, So that's it. So that's a raw food diet. And then just let me add, when we cook the food, we actually lose a lot of nutrients because they are called what we call labile. Labile is sensible. So sensible to thermal labile, heat labile, oxygen labile, and thermo-oxygeno and photolabile. They're easily damaged by light, oxygen, and heat. So when we cook the food, we're actually damaging a lot of the nutrients. Some are leached, like minerals are leached to the water. That's why the water goes with a different color when you're cooking. And you can even the water that you steam some broccoli, you can see the water a little bit green. And if you taste the water, it has a different taste because the minerals from the broccoli went to the water. And also you inactivate enzymes, for example, myrosinase, that is the enzyme that creates anti-cancer substances from the glucosinolates. The enzyme is inactivated the more you cook it, or even freezing it deactivate the enzyme. So there's a lot of science to back it up that we shouldn't be cooking. But human beings are human beings, right? We all know it. The progress is slow. We don't realize when it's time we see it. For example, I was really sick. I knew I was going to die really early. I knew it. I couldn't play sports well. I couldn't do well in school. I was feeling so much pain every single day. And I knew I had to change. But my dad, for example, he saw me changing for 10 years. He saw me doing water fast, 24-day water fast, really after I changed, a few months after I changed this diet. He saw me doing a water fast. He saw me, from the sickest of the sick to the healthiest of the healthiest. He saw that, and he actually admires it. But he was like, he was Italian, right? That's why my name's Corassa. He was during the war. The immigrants from Italy came to Brazil, and they were, my father grew on the farm, planting what he ate. It was like agriculture for a living. He sold the things that he ate. They planned and even ate the things that they planned. They didn't have money, so he was like a bull, like he was like a gorilla or something. He was like so heavy. His bones were so big. It was impressive. He actually weaned himself when he was 6 years of age. It's insane, but it's actually the norm for primitive people. It's the norm for anthropoid primates. We know that's the norm in primatology. And so he didn't know he needed to live healthy. So what he did, he kept eating the same old crappy shit that, big cities sell you. And he ended up with cancer. In his last days, he said to me, I want to become a frugivore because I not just admire you, I think you're right. But he was already with metastatic cancer in 4 organs and he died. So even when we see it, we cannot even change it because human progress is too slow. That's sad, but it's actually true. So there's a lot of science behind raw foods and cooking foods, because the next part of the science is when we cook it, we create Maillard reaction end products. So it's like cooked food toxins. They're actually correlated with every single disease in the planet. Like heart disease, you have high PRMs, MRPs, Maillard reaction end products in your blood when you have heart disease. You have high MRPs when you have diabetes. You have MRPs even in the cancer tissues when you have cancer. If you have high MRPs in your blood, you have more chance of neurological diseases, and you have even brain atrophy. So that's why I was saying I learned a lot easier English, and I retain a lot of the knowledge because of my lifestyle. People used to think, back then I used to think I was stupid, I was dumb. And now people say like, you are so smart, you're so intelligent. And I'm like, no way, I'm not. I'm just taking care of my brain way much better than everybody else. I'm sleeping a lot earlier, so you have more what we call spinal cerebral fluid. That is like a fluid that comes out on your brain when you're sleeping and takes out the metabolic waste and clean your brain from amyloid plaques, beta amyloid plaques, and tau proteins. That is the cause of Alzheimer's, dementia, So I'm eating fruits and vegetables that induces neurogenesis and neuroprotection. It protects your brains and creates even new neurons. I'm doing a lot of stuff, exercising every day. So I'm doing a lot of stuff that protects my brain. And people are like, oh, you're smart, you're smart. No. You're making yourself dumb by being sedentary, eating cooked food, eating industrialized food, and by not eating antioxidants, phytonutrients, etc., that we know that improves brain function. So that's a raw food diet. A diet, if you can actually think you're a raw foodist, if you at least eat 80% of the diet raw. But the truth is, we as human beings have been cooking only for 10,000 years. Yeah, for sure. We have started cooking 100,000 years, maybe even more than that. But there was no internet. The trend was not going on to the whole planet. Like even if a tribe started cooking something, it was really hard to make fire. There was no lights. How do you turn on a cigarette? It's like the
Lighter.
a lighter. There was no lighters back then. Like it was not easy to make fire. There was no pots and pans. We invented pots and pans like 5,000 years ago. So how do you cook a potato when you have to throw in the fire? You burn the potato. You don't cook it. So there was no salt. There was no plates. There was no forks, knives, and like spoons, and nothing like this. So people think like, oh, cooking. No. It's really, really, really recently that we have started cooking, and there's a lot of reasons, scientific reasons, to think that we're actually deteriorating because of cooking. And that's why I eat a raw food diet, not just because I feel better, because there's a lot of science to it, and there's a lot of logic to it, because all animals through a billion of years since animal evolution, animals started on the planet, have been eating raw, so.
Yeah, well, that's and I'm one of those people that I understand that diets can be a little tribalistic, and it can be a little confusing because the average person does go online, they Google diets and nutrition, and you can get a lot of conflicting opinions. You get a lot of different perspectives. Even like the blue zones, for example. There's some people who say some of those studies are flawed, and there's issues with some of that. And that's why I have people on from, I've had Dr. Sean Baker on, the carnivore guy. I've had Dr. Dominic D'Agostino on. I've had Rob Wolf on. I've had so many people in the diet and nutrition world. And I think there is some common things between all the diets. I think the last raw food, Andrea Lowell, she's a fitness person who's been on the show, and she's big into raw food diet. Also, that's how she eats, and I think commonly they all have. They all eliminate processed foods. They all eliminate, added sugar, any artificial stuff. And it all comes down to kind of basic things like, eat things you could pick, things you could grow, things you could kill. Like these are kind of the way people have lived forever. And even with fasting, like my mother's very old school, and she doesn't understand fasting. And then I try to explain to her, I'm like, food wasn't always guaranteed. We are designed to go long periods of time without eating. Long periods of time without drinking, much more difficult. But long periods of time without eating, I'm like, that's why we have stored fat. It's called stored fat because it's storing it for when you need it. And if you're not eating, your body will hop in ketosis, start producing ketones, and eventually start burning that fat. And I know a lot of Muslim friends of mine who do Ramadans, and I fast every day. I eat once a day. Kind of the Portuguese, I eat late at night, kind of like I'm still in Europe, even though I shouldn't eat so late at night. But I like having my glass of wine with my dinner, and it's the one time I eat is at night. And people are like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And I'm like, "It's not that hard. It really isn't. Like once you start eating cleaner, you don't obsess over food as much as average person. When you're constantly having those insulin spikes, when you're constantly eating processed foods, you're gonna get hungry, and you're gonna constantly feel like you're eating more. And the problem with food, or what we call food today, is that it looks like food, it smells like food, but it's not really food. It's an artificial thing that's supposed to trick your mind into believing it's food. And that's why Doritos and all potato chips, all these things, they have the word potato in it, but it's just full of artificial things. You look at the ingredients, you don't even know any what these things are, and most of it's not food. And it's just tricking your brain into wanting more and believing it's eating food. So you're not getting any real nutrition from this. And I think a lot of people who do eat a plant-based diet or a raw food-based diet, or they do a carnivore or keto diet, the reason why they have success with it, and I do like a I call it a ketovore diet. It's the way I eat. I eat mostly meats and you know and salad. But the reason why I think it works for so many people, it's not so much what you're eating, but I think a lot of it is because of what you're not eating, right? Like because if you do a paleo diet or you do a keto diet, you do a carnivore diet, you do a raw food diet, like what aren't you eating? All those bad things are contributing to your you know your health issues. So I think you know I think when I was reading up on you, one thing that I liked was that you were saying how you're like, you know, you're open to different ideas and you're open to different diets, and you're not, you know, you don't seem to be this because in the health and nutrition world, there's a lot of extremists, you know, extremism where like it's a, you know, their diet becomes their religion, you know, where it's like you defend it. And you know, when I had Dr. Sean Baker on, I did the carnivore diet for 3 weeks, and I felt amazing. I liked it. You know, I felt good. But I also understand, like, you know, what our ancestors ate compared to maybe what somebody else's ancestors ate throughout their generations could affect the way they're processing the same food. So, you know, what works maybe for me or for you, somebody else might need to slightly modify it, you know. So you know, that's also the case. But when you look at like so many of our health issues, so much of our lack of our ability to deal with stress, so much of our ability to have the energy to do the things we enjoy, so much of our ability to, like you said, like to cognitively remember things and regurgitate them when you want to and go in your memory bank is due to just our health issues, you know. And there's a lot of I had Dr. Thomas Seyfried on, who wrote the book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, and he talked about, you know, what a lot of people have talked about throughout the years, is how like glucose is the energy source for cancer, and how you know how you can basically use dietary therapies to help prevent, or in some cases starve, the cancer cells. And he has all these peer review studies. You know, I think it was like 150 peer review studies, and nobody's interested in it. Nobody, because you're basically saying this is a possible way of curing or preventing, or even I guess in some of his studies, even people who were doing traditional chemo and radiation therapy, if they remove glucose from their diet, they were seeing quicker recovery times. But nobody's interested in it because it's a dietary therapy. You know, same thing with like seizures in the ketogenic diet. I've had Jim Abrams on. I don't know if you remember those movies, Naked Gun and Airplane, the real funny movies from like the late 80s, early 90s. And he was a filmmaker. His son had violent seizures, similar to you. Like, here's a pill, here's a surgery, here's a pill. Nothing worked. He found a study from John Hopkins in I think the late 70s that were showing success with the ketogenic diet and getting rid of these seizures. He gives it a try, cures his son of these seizures, and then he starts a foundation called the Charlie Foundation, named after his son, to basically look into how diet can actually help prevent and cure diseases. And the thing is, there's no money in diets helping and curing diseases, so there's not the, you know, big pharma's not, you know, spending money in this research. If they do spend money in this research, what they're trying to do is take that information, like, how can we make a pill out of it, and then sell you the pill, right?
It's quite funny because we usually talk a lot of bad about bad pharma, and for sure that big pharma that has a part to it. But there's also a part of human beings, you know, like I have a fasting documentary that has like 1,005,500,000 views on YouTube. And you know, the funny part is that people see me fasting and I write there, the fasting cure, you know, the title, you know, so they just understand the fasting part. So they come to me to, you know, how can I fast? Can I go to you and to your farm to fast? No, but they don't understand that it's not fasting. Fasting helps for sure, but it's the whole lifestyle. It's what you eat. It's what you exercise. It's the time you sleep, the time you have dinner, interaction with plants. There's a lot of science back it up that plants secrete gases invisible to our eyes that actually goes into us and has anti-cancer properties. It helps natural killer cells. It helps anti-tumoral proteins inside of us. It helps to regulate blood. It helps to regulate glycemia. It's like to be around plants is to protect you from diabetes and cancer. But people don't realize. They come to me and I was like, you're not going to fast me to cure me? Okay, I come back later. There's a lot of people, and I'm like, what? They want to buy, they want to okay, I can pay you $10,000 and, you fast me. And it's not like that. You have to learn it. You have to change it. It's a whole changing mindset stuff. So it's also a problem in human beings. And for sure, I completely agree. I sometimes vegans may not like me, but when I say it, but vegan junk food is way worse than meat, in my humble opinion. Because for sure, processed meats is junk. The same way, processed plants is junk. If you're going to eat anything, even if it's cooked food, even if it's meat, eat the most as close to the original as possible. If you have to cook it the least as possible. You have to season it the least as possible. Even turmeric nowadays, people are like turmeric, but they use the bought season from the supermarket that is full of crap. And it's like, okay, the roots may be anti-inflammatory compounds, but when you process the things and put like even color to it, it's not, it doesn't have the same thing as it should be. It should have.
Now, with cooked food, so I'm sure you're familiar with like the Liver King and eating all the raw food and whatnot. He was doing things, and I know obviously he was full of steroids and that wasn't eating liver that made him look like that, but I do think some people were surprised that a human digestive system could eat raw food like that. And that's the part that was, I think, interesting, right? And I'm like, okay, obviously you're not going to look like that eating liver, even though liver is very nutritionally dense and it's I think it's good for you. But it's one of those things where like it showed that like, okay, maybe, it kind of breaks through the way we look at eating food, right? Like maybe, because I like stuff undercooked, and my wife will sometimes be like, you're gonna get sick, or you're gonna, and I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't, I'm like, I don't think I am, I'm fine, and there is a
sashimi. The Japanese eat a lot of raw fish and they don't get sick. I think because there's a lot of science suggesting if you eat raw eggs, you can have salmonella. But, there's a lot of science also suggesting that if you cook anything, it's like putting your hand on the fire. If you put your hand inside of a pan with 250 degrees, you're going to incinerate your hand. It's going to produce, like, if you burn down a tree, it's ashes. If you eat the ashes, it's toxins. It's like cigarettes. When you're burning the cigarettes, it's not just the substance over there. You're inhalating benzopiren, a lot of toxins that are produced just by the combustion of something, So it's,
now, is
the Liver King issue is quite funny because people actually thought he was like, since the beginning, I was like, that's not liver, like that's, he's injecting a lot of hormones. It's obvious, but for sure, it's quite impressive that he can eat that amount of raw organs, meats, and even bones, and he doesn't get sick, and for sure, if my humble opinion, there's no science to back it up, but I think if you're going to eat animals, if you're going to eat plants, we have a lot of science behind it, and even if you're going to eat animals, I think it would be more healthy to eat than raw. But for sure, there's toxins and there's microbial tolerance. There's a lot of things that we must talk about it. But still, sashimi is probably way better than cooked fish.
Yeah, and the other thing that I want to talk to you about, because I find this interesting, I'd love to get your opinion on this, is the idea, because you did grow up being a gamer and you're big into video games, and it seems to be like a trend now. I don't know if I'm sure you've noticed that more and more, like I grew up playing video games too. You know, I played FIFA, I played, played games, I live in New England and Massachusetts, so it's like in the winter there's not a lot to do. You're gonna play a little bit of video games, and you're gonna be stuck inside the house. But they say that statistically they're seeing more and more kids spending more time playing video games, and more kids playing video games and less interaction, which means like some of the issues that we've talked about, like less time outside, getting vitamin D, being in Mother Nature, exercising. Is this something that you've paid attention to, and why do you think we're, as somebody who was a gamer, why do you think we're trending in that direction?
I think there's a lot to explain by human biology and human psychology, because, for example, cell phones make you secrete dopamine. The more you interact with a video game, you are getting, you're getting some dopamine high. So we know, and there's the human biological conservation mechanisms. We are animals made to conserve energy. And that's why birds fly in V, the fish swimming in like cardumes, a lot of fish together, because they're saving energy. Everything we do, you want to spend the least energy to get the most amount of pleasure. That's human biology, because there was no food available in nature. So you have to save the most amount of energy to be able to go through winter without food. So I think that's the main reason. And we like comfort. It's not our nature. If it's 0 Celsius degree outside, it's not like, for sure. We know Wim Hof, and we know that cold therapy actually produces health. But in terms of human biology, you don't want to go into the cold. You don't want to go into the heat. You can force yourself. You can adapt yourself. But what we do always is to conservate, to stay in pleasure environment. If you go even to a hotel, you want the most pleasure hotel instead of the crappy one with like water dripping from the ceiling, and you cannot sleep right. Even the temperature should be right for us to sleep, and we seek comfort as human beings, I think. So that's why we're playing more video games, eating more junk food, because that secretes more dopamine. Cooked food is good because it has a lot of calories. So when you season it, and when you throw some oil and you throw some sugar, it's concentrated calories. So it secretes a lot of dopamine. So it's the pleasure trap, I think. We have more dopamine, and the brain likes it, but it's the pleasure trap because the food doesn't have the nutrients, the lifestyle doesn't have the biological adaptations of these longevity genes, as we call, because the stress, the good stress that we induce by cold, by heat, it's actually good for the body. The stress from the fasting, from the lifting weights, from the exercise, it's biological stress that is needed to turn on the repairing genes, the longevity genes, as we call AMPK, FOXO, sirtuins. So we need this stress, but we don't like to get the stress. As human beings, it's stressful to get the stress. But at the same time, when you learn the science and you have been sick before, so you have a motivation, how hurt, because that's one of the things that nature hygienists, this model of science of health, as I teach, as I learned back then, they used to say that pain is good. Pain is actually a teacher. You need or else you could go you put your hand on ice, you freeze your hand. If you don't feel pain, you're going to lose your hand. You put your hand on the fire, you don't feel pain, you're going to lose your hand. So you need the pain to teach you what is right and what is wrong. Actually, pain is nature teacher. So when we can stay indoors with the air conditioner on, or the heater on, playing video games and having fast food that is a lot of calories without fiber, without even having to, go for it, having to search for it, why are you going to leave it? It's the perfect environment. You have everything you need, but you're getting sick. Your reproductive system is getting damaged. Like you're not going to have you're going to have an erectile dysfunction. Or if you're a woman, you're not going to feel pleasure. Getting to the mood. A lot of things that we know that happens to the female reproductive system as well. You're going to get a lot of issues. So where's the pleasure? Pleasure is actually in nature. You have to go through these biological adaptations, these harsh times, to be able to enjoy the good times. And I used to play a lot of video game, but it didn't make anything good for me. It just made me lazy, fat, and sick.
Yeah, and that's a important part of understanding how your body works, is this idea that you have to give it some suffering, some struggle for it to say, okay, now I need to be bigger and stronger. And when you work out, that's what you're doing. You're putting your body through some type of struggle, and then your body says, hey, to deal with this, I need to get bigger and stronger. It's same thing with, like, they talk about older people when they fall and they break a hip, or their bone density shrinkens and diminishes, and it's because you're not moving anymore. So your body is very smart, like you said. Like, your body doesn't want to waste resources if it doesn't have to. So it's like, okay, if you're not doing anything, there's no point of me to keep this muscle on your body. There's no need for me to keep this bone strong. And go ahead.
And it's also a lot of other issues that make us want to move less, because when you're sleep deprived, you don't want to exercise. You get grumpy, sleep, and we're like the lights on the ceiling. It's like a sun at midnight. So our genes expression, everything changes. So you don't want to exercise in the next day because you're so lazy. So, you didn't repair your body the way you needed. So you're lazy the next day. And so you end up eating crap, because when you're sleep deprived, your cortisol levels rise, your ghrelin levels rise, your leptin levels decreases. So you feel more hunger, less satiated, and more desire to eat junk food, more caloric dense food, because of the cortisol. So there's a lot of things going on also to make us, want to stay less and less motivated to live in nature. It's actually a maladaptation. We start getting sicker and sicker, and the more sick we are, the more introspective you are, the more depressive you are, the more you want to stay indoors and not, communicate, live. It's just see different animals. When an animal is striving, you can see it. He's running around. He wants exercise. He wants food. Anything you give as food to him, he's like salivating. His eyes are open. He wants to play. But when he's sick, he's not moving too much. He doesn't even food. He doesn't want food too much. All his, you can tell just by looking at him, just by his expression, his way of behaving, that he's sick. So look at human beings, so you can tell that we are surviving and not thriving. And that's what I think is most difficult for people to understand, because it's not just a big pharma issue. It's actually a human being issue. After we learn wrong, we are hard to get it right. Because, for example, I never heard of natural hygiene back then. So when I got sick, I think it was normal to get sick, because everyone around me was like, getting fever is normal, getting cold is normal, getting a sore throat, getting a mucus nose is normal. These things, cancer is normal, diabetes is normal. So people just normalize disease, but it's not normal. We're not meant to be sick in 120 years of age. Maybe we broke some bones, maybe we, get like cut, bruised, or trying to protect ourselves from predators. But getting sick the way we get, it's by our lifestyle habits. It's not something like virus that came from nature, from nowhere, and attacked you. That is like BS.
Yeah, and that's why I love these type of podcasts, because people can take something from it and change their lives immediately, and not just improve one aspect of it, but improve all aspects of their lives, have more energy, be in a better mood, so you become a better husband, a better boyfriend, a better wife, a better sister, a better and everything. Because if you're in a better mood, if you have more, like you said, when you're low on energy, you usually don't want to be bothered. You're usually kind of moody. If you're high on energy, you're smiling, you're ready to go, and people also need to get outside. And the human body is a amazing piece of machinery. I think, like you said, if you give it the things it wants, the things that it needs, it's capable of doing some amazing things. Wim Hof, I'm a huge fan of Wim Hof. I think he's teaching people how to tap into our internal strength. But back in the day, getting into the health and nutrition world, people like Max Gerson, and I've had Dr. Brzezinski on, and all these people that kind of look at health and nutrition and slightly different. And to me, that's really important, because I think we can take things in our own hands, and we maybe you're right. Maybe I spend too much time pointing the finger at big pharma, and maybe I should be telling people, like, turn that finger around and point it at yourself, and like, okay, what can I do? What can I do to change my life now, and be, have more energy for my grandkids, have more, just hopefully be alive longer and healthier for my family and friends, so I can enjoy life to its fullest.
Exactly. We are also guilty. That's the truth. For sure, there's a lot of things going on because of capitalism. Everything turns. The world spins because of money. We need money, and there's a lot of things to it. But also, there's a lot of issues with the human psychology wanting always the fastest route, and changing lifestyle habits, changing beliefs, having to study. It is not painful, but you need to dedicate yourself. You need to lose some time studying, reading, understanding, learning new things. For me to learn how to exercise an hour and a half per day religiously, for me to learn to go to bed earlier, learning about chrononutrition, chronobiology, learning the statistics from modern allopathic medicine, chemotherapy and things like that. Chemotherapy, for example, I wrote a cancer book. Most people don't know, but it's actually mustard gas. It was created from the gas that they were throwing in soldiers in the Second World War, and that burns them on the inside. They just changed the formula a little bit, and there's chemotherapy. But there's actually scientific data to suggest that chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery can induce metastasis. And what kills in cancer? It's actually the metastasis. It's not the cancer itself, but it's actually in spreads to different organs. So there's a lot of science to back it up. That you look at blue zones, they live to 100. We should be following them, even if there's no science behind it. We should be doing what they are doing. And for sure, we all agree on one thing: industrialized food and modern lifestyle habits is crap. Maybe we don't actually agree 100% on diets, but what we agree on, it's going to bed early, exercising every day, not seeing light at night because of chronobiology aspect, trying to cook less. These are basic stuff, not eating anything that's processed, maybe animals, maybe plants, but nothing processed. So, if everybody was responsible with them, when you understand responsibility, that you cannot buy health, it doesn't come in a pill, potion, or powder. You have to earn it every day by your lifestyle choices. I used to like to go out to eat. I used to like to go out to nightclubs. I used to like a lot of stuff, even video games. I was addicted to it, but it didn't love me back. I felt crap every time I do it. It was not taking me where I wanted. So I changed to a small city. I used to live in Rio de Janeiro, a big city, but I know that big cities are not conducive of good health. Even psychopathologies are higher in big cities than in the farms, like in the small cities. So when you are in a big city, you are more sick mentally, because you're not seeing plants and animals every time. You're seeing builds, buildings, and cement and like gray stuff. It's, there's no life, microbiological life. I was just touching the ground and planting new trees over here in my yard, and we know this helps the microbiota just to touch the ground, to touch the soil. You don't even need to eat the fiber. You just need to touch the soil to get a new, a better microbiota, a microbiome, like so.
Well, they call it grounding, right? It's people who take off their shoes and socks and they actually touch the ground. I mean, it sounds like a hippie thing, like we're all one. I was just talking about this. I had Jim Brewer on my last podcast, and I believe it was that show. I'm always saying this. I'm like, we grew up hearing the hippies say, "Oh, we're all one, we're all one." But when you really think about it, we really are. Like we're gonna die. Our body's going to disintegrate onto the earth. That's going to grow some beautiful plants, which some animals are going to eat. And it's like we all kind of just share this world together and are all a part of it. And I think that's a really important lesson, is like, hey, you're not outside this earth, and you're not we almost pretend like we're not a part of the animal kingdom and Mother Nature. We're like this other alien that came here and we're just living on. It's like, no, we're a part of this kingdom. We're a part of Mother Nature. We're, and we can learn together and we grow together and we all need each other, so without a doubt, and you talk about junk food and video games. You said it, and it's absolutely true. Like, it makes you happy, it makes you feel good for a little bit, but it's not good for you. And it's the same thing, the same way junk food releases those happy chemicals in your brain that makes you want more. Video games do the same thing, and it becomes addictive. In the same way people are addicted to video games, they're addicted to junk food. And you have to acknowledge that, like, hey, I got to cut this way. And there's probably going to be some withdrawals, just like with any addiction. But it's necessary, and it'll help your health, make you a better person, give you the energy to enjoy life. And I think these things are so important, because exercise, being outside, eating better, these are all things that can improve your mental health and physical health immediately and improve all aspects of life. So any last words before we cut this out?
If people enjoyed my point of view, my work, they can get to know better. I have a YouTube channel, even in English. I just created one. You search for Dr. Corassa, so you can find it. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok. I have a website, but in Portuguese. But I translated my first book to English, and it's also available on Amazon on hardcover, on printed. So it's hygienic fasting. So I think it's the most up-to-date book on fasting science and application, like the hygienic perspective, because these hygienists have been fasting people for 200 years. Herbert Shelton, one of my mentors, fasted 40,000 people. So we know the drill. We know how to go on. So I think I made a wonderful work. If somebody wants to know more about water fasting and even just intermittent fasting, and put all the science over there. So my last words is, your body is your only car that you ever get. So like, take care of it. Like, it's like life is just for today, like there's no tomorrow. Every day you have to do it perfectly, or else you are the only one suffering. And not just that, you're not the only one suffering. Your grandchildren, your children, and your grandchildren are going to suffer because of epigenetics, transgenerational changes. When you smoke nowadays, you're going to damage your DNA for the next generation. When you do anything, not just smoke. I'm just, so I'm really passionate about it. And it's so much better to be healthy than to be sick. That there's no cheese, there's no, video game. There's nothing that's going to make me come back, because I have been to both sides of the fence. I have seen both sides. And for sure, I will not come back to, a lazy, less coordinated, less intelligent, less having less testosterone, being less male, and as I was before. When you're fat, you convert your testosterone to estrogen, aromatase. So you're even less man, So for me, there's no reason to come back. And I suggest everybody that is listening, to live as healthy as you can, because you're going to help not just yourself, people around you, and the planet. So there's a no-brainer, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll put links to all that in the show description. So please, people, check out his YouTube channel, check out his books. I know you've recently started doing more interviews in English, and you have a huge following in Brazil and in the Portuguese community. So it's awesome to see you transition and kind of get some English speaking people over there. But obrigado, amigo, for everything, for the conversation. Keep up the amazing work. I will send you the links to the show once it's up and live, and hopefully we talk again in the near future.
For sure, it would be a pleasure. Just invite me. I'll be happy to be on again. And in June, I will be in Portugal for a month to teach and to eat some Portuguese Algarve figs.
Yeah,
Figos algarvianos. Muito bom, muito bom. Muy bueno, like the Spanish say.
Like the Spanish say. Muy bueno. Yeah, well, the thing is, the Spanish and the Portuguese, people always mess up our last names. They mess up our because it's like, my mother's maiden name is Gomes, right? Like if you're a Gomes in America, you're a Gomez. If you're a Diaz, a Diaz, it's like a Diaz. It's like, oh, with a Z, right? I'm like, no, it's a S. It's a S. It's it's Rodriguez, not Rodriguez.
It's like speaking Sweden. Have you ever tried? It's hard. You may read the word, but you cannot express the exact, you cannot say the exact word as they say. You need a lot of practice to be able to, it's hard. It's hard for them. I know. I understand.
Yeah. But what Portuguese is said. Like when I go back to Portugal, I can read the words because the words are spelled the way they're said. So it makes a lot easier. And then you try to explain like English to my parents, and they're like, "Wait, I don't get this word. Why is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that letter's silent, or that letter's next to that letter, so now it sounds different." It's much more confusing of a language. I feel like Portuguese, if you had to learn a language, it would be a little easier to pick up because things make a little bit more sense. But it's a beautiful language too. I love hearing it spoken. I think it's one of those languages that people don't give enough credit for. They always talk about the romantic languages, the Spanish, the Italian, the French. I'm like, don't forget Portuguese is one of those romantic languages. It's also a beautiful language. So but thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Enjoy. You live in Brazil now, right? You're in Brazil?
Rio de Janeiro, Saquarema. It's actually where the last stage for the World Surf Tournament happens. It's really close to Rio de Janeiro, but it's a small city. So I changed because of the health lifestyle to live better. And it's really close to here. Anytime you're here, just message me and we hook up for some exercise and some natural food.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a farther cousin that lives down there, but I've been wanting to go a lot because it's beautiful beaches, obviously tons of beautiful places, and and also a lot of football. So we could play some beach soccer.
For sure. Message me whenever you come.
Great.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
If you're ever in the East Coast, if you're ever in America in the East Coast, let me know. Well, I'll bring you to some Portuguese and Brazilian restaurants, but you can't eat most of the food anyways.
Show me some farmers market and I'll be happy. And we exercise.
Hey, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Ciao. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Ciao, meu querido amigo. Abraço. Até mais.
Yeah, ciao.